What's a filthy cockroach like you doing at a gala full of real people?
Washington, D.C.'s most exclusive charity gala. And Clayton Prescott III, a billionaire in a tailored tuxedo, staring down at a black woman like she was dirt on his shoe. Amara didn't flinch.
Excuse me?
You heard me. Get out.
I was invited here. Just like you.
His jaw tightened.
Just like me. You think you're like me. You're nothing.
He stepped forward.
You're a rat in a cheap dress.
That's when he lost it. He shoved her. Hard. Amara hit the marble floor. Her knee cracked against cold stone. Champagne splashed across her dress.
Crawl back to the gutter, you worthless animal.
50 people watched. Nobody moved. But here's the thing. Clayton Prescott had no idea what was hanging on the wall behind him. And when he found out, it destroyed everything. Crazy part? That wasn't even the worst of it. Rewind 6 hours. 6 hours earlier, Amara Donovan's morning looked nothing like a billionaire's. No private chef, no personal stylist, no assistant laying out designer clothes on a king-sized bed. Just a woman in a quiet brownstone in Northeast D.C., sitting at a small kitchen table with a cup of black coffee going cold. Her laptop screen glowed with a video call. 3 faces from her operations team stared back at her. They were finalizing a new distribution hub in West Africa. Shipping routes, customs clearance, last-mile logistics for communities most companies wouldn't bother reaching. "We're 2 weeks ahead of schedule," her VP said. Amara smiled. "Don't celebrate yet. 2 weeks ahead means 2 weeks to find what we missed." That was Amara. The woman ran a $4.2 billion company and still talked like someone who expected the rug to be pulled out at any moment. Because for most of her life, it had been. She grew up in public housing on Detroit's East Side, shared a bedroom with 2 sisters, roaches in the kitchen, mold on the ceiling. The kind of place where the hallway lights never worked and nobody came to fix them. She earned a full ride to MIT. Not because someone handed it to her, because she studied under a flashlight when the power got cut. She built Pinnacle Dynamics from a 1-bedroom apartment with $800 in savings. No investors, no family money, no connections. Just a woman who refused to be invisible. Now she was worth $4.2 billion. And tonight, she was the guest of honor at the Sterling Heritage Foundation's annual gala. She pulled a simple black dress from her closet. No logos, no labels, nothing that screamed money. She did her own makeup in the bathroom mirror, drove herself to the venue in a 5-year-old sedan. That was the thing about Amara Donovan. She never performed wealth. She never needed anyone to know. And that was exactly what made tonight so dangerous. The Sterling Heritage Hotel was the kind of place that made you feel poor just walking in. 30-foot ceilings, Italian marble floors polished to a mirror shine, crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hanging from gold-leafed arches. The air smelled like fresh orchids and old money. Washington's elite had been holding events here for over a century. Presidents, senators, Fortune 500 CEOs. If your name didn't carry weight, you didn't walk through the front door. And right there, in the center of the grand atrium lobby, above the main fireplace, hung a 6-foot oil painting. The woman in the portrait wore a quiet smile. Her eyes were calm, confident. The gold plaque beneath it read, "Amara Donovan, changemaker of the decade, for transforming communities through innovation and compassion. Every single guest walked past that portrait on their way into the ballroom. Some glanced at it. Most didn't stop. Tonight, one man in particular walked past it without even turning his head. Clayton Prescott III arrived exactly the way you'd expect a man like him to arrive. A black Bentley pulled up to the entrance. The door opened before the car fully stopped. Clayton stepped out in a custom tuxedo that cost more than most people's rent. His wife Lorraine followed. Diamonds at her throat, fur across her shoulders, a smile that never once reached her eyes. They walked through the lobby like they owned it. Handshakes, air kisses, that loud, performative laugh rich people do when they want everyone to know they're having a good time. Clayton didn't attend galas because he cared about causes. He attended because the right handshake at the right event was worth more than a board meeting. Every donation was a tax write-off. Every conversation was a transaction. Tonight, he was irritated. The keynote honoree was someone he'd never heard of. Some woman, some nobody as far as he was concerned. Then he spotted her near the hors d'oeuvres table. A black woman, simple dress, no entourage, no security, no one orbiting around her the way people orbited around him. He looked at her the way a man looks at something that doesn't belong in his house. And in that single glance, Clayton Prescott made the worst decision of his life. Let me set the scene for you. The ballroom was packed. 300 guests spread across round tables draped in white linen. Candlelight flickered off champagne flutes. A string quartet played something soft in the corner. The smell of roasted duck and truffle oil floated through the room. This was the kind of event where people whispered instead of talked, where every laugh was measured, where the wrong outfit or the wrong handshake could get you blacklisted from the next invitation. Amara stood near the edge of the room, close to the hors d'oeuvres table. She held a glass of champagne she hadn't sipped yet. She was watching the room the way she always did, quietly, patiently, taking everything in before making a move. A few guests had introduced themselves earlier. Polite nods, surface-level small talk. Nobody recognized her. Nobody asked her name twice. She didn't mind. She wasn't here for attention. She was here because the Sterling Heritage Foundation had asked her to say a few words about education access for underserved communities. That was the cause. That was what mattered. She had no idea what was coming. Clayton was 15 feet away, holding court. 2 hedge fund managers stood in front of him, nodding along like their paychecks depended on it. Clayton was talking about a waterfront development deal in Miami. His hands moved big. His voice carried bigger. He wasn't having a conversation. He was performing. Lorraine stood beside him, scanning the room like a security camera with diamonds on. "The mayor practically begged us to take the contract," Clayton said, swirling his champagne. "I told him, you don't beg a Prescott. You thank a Prescott." The hedge fund guys laughed on cue. Clayton turned sharply to grab a passing canapé. And that's when he collided with Amara. It wasn't a brush. It wasn't a bump. His full shoulder drove into hers. Her champagne glass flew from her hand and shattered on the marble floor. The cold liquid splashed up her dress and across her arms. She stumbled. Her heel caught the wet marble. And she went down. Her knee hit the stone first, then her palm. The sharp crack echoed through the nearest cluster of tables. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. Amara knelt there for a second, champagne soaking through her dress, a thin line of blood forming on her knee where it split against the marble edge. Clayton looked down at her, not with concern, not with surprise, with irritation, like she'd stepped on his shoe. And then he said it. "What are you even doing here?" Amara looked up at him. "I'm a guest." His lip curled. A guest. He let the word hang in the air like it was a joke. He looked at her dress, looked at her hair, looked at her skin. Then he turned to the two hedge fund managers and said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "They'll let anyone through the door these days, won't they?" Lorraine stepped forward. She didn't crouch down. She didn't offer a hand. She stood over Amara like a woman examining a stain on her carpet. "Sweetie." Her voice dripped with something worse than anger. It dripped with amusement. "The service entrance is around the back. And while you're at it, maybe grab a mop for this mess you made." She flicked her fingers toward the shattered glass on the floor, like she was giving orders to a dog. A young woman at a nearby table, blonde, mid-20s, looked uncomfortable. She opened her mouth like she might say something. Then she closed it, looked down at her plate. Nobody else moved. Amara stood up slowly. She didn't use the table for support. She didn't wipe her dress. She stood on her own 2 feet and looked Clayton Prescott dead in the eye. "I'm not catering staff. I was invited to this event." Clayton tilted his head, that mocking tilt. The kind of tilt a man gives when he's already decided you're beneath him and everything you say is entertainment. Invited, right. He took a sip of his champagne. "And I suppose you bought that dress with your little food stamps, did you? Or did you steal it on the way in?" A few people gasped quietly. Most just stared. Amara's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed level. "I'd like to speak to the event coordinator." Clayton laughed. Not a chuckle, a full, open-mouthed laugh. The kind designed to make someone feel small. "The event coordinator? Honey. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you even know what that word means? Let me make this simple for you." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the champagne on his breath. "You don't belong here. You have never belonged here. Your kind parks the cars. Your kind scrubs the toilets. Your kind does not stand in this room and pretend to be one of us." He said "your kind" like it was 2 words he'd been saving all night. Amara didn't move. She didn't raise her voice. She stood completely still and said, "You need to step back." Clayton's eyes narrowed. "Or what? What are you going to do? Call someone? Who's going to believe you? Look around this room. Look at every face in here. Then look at yours. You are nothing. You are nobody. And the sooner you accept that, the easier your miserable little life will be." He turned to a passing server, an actual hotel employee in a white jacket, and snapped his fingers. "You, go get security. This woman doesn't have an invitation. She wandered in off the street. I want her removed. Now." The server froze. He looked at Amara. He looked at Clayton. He didn't know what to do. "Did I stutter?" Clayton's voice dropped low. Dangerous. "Get security. Now." The server hurried away. Lorraine put her hand on Clayton's arm, but not to calm him down. She leaned in and whispered just loud enough for Amara to hear. "Don't waste your breath on trash, darling. It doesn't understand English." Amara's hands trembled at her sides, not from fear, from the effort of staying still. 2 minutes later, Terence Cole walked through the ballroom doors. Terence was the head of security at the Sterling Heritage Hotel. 6'3", former military, 20 years in private security. He'd worked every major event this hotel had hosted for the past decade. He approached the scene quickly. His shoes clicked on the marble. His earpiece crackled with radio chatter. Clayton spotted him and immediately straightened up, pointed at Amara like he was identifying a suspect in a lineup. Finally, this woman is trespassing. She has no invitation. She's been harassing guests and making a scene. Remove her immediately. Terrence looked at Clayton. Then he looked at Amara. And something shifted in his face. His eyes widened, just a fraction. The kind of recognition that doesn't need a second look. He knew exactly who she was. He'd been at the ceremony 6 months ago when her portrait was unveiled in the lobby. He'd shaken her hand. But before he could open his mouth, Clayton was already barking again. "Are you deaf? I said get this woman out of here. I am Clayton Prescott. I own 3 properties in this building's investment portfolio. I will have your badge and your pension if you don't do your job in the next 10 seconds. Terrence took a slow breath. He turned to Amara. His voice was quiet, respectful. "Ma'am, are you all right? Can I get you anything?" Clayton's face turned red. He took a step toward Terrence. "What did you just say to her? I gave you an order. You work for this building. You work for me. Now remove this cockroach from this ballroom before I—" "Sir," Terrence's voice was steel, "I'd strongly recommend you stop talking." Clayton sputtered. You dare! I'll have you fired before midnight." Terrence didn't blink. He looked at Amara again, then back at Clayton. And he said, very calmly, "Sir, you have no idea what you've just done." Clayton scoffed. "What I've done? I'm cleaning up your mess! That's what I've done!" But something about the way Terrence said it, that steady, unbothered calm, made 2 or 3 guests near the back exchange glances. Something was wrong. Something Clayton hadn't figured out yet, and it was about to blow up in his face. The ballroom had gone quiet in the wrong way. Not the peaceful quiet of a room at rest, the suffocating quiet of a room holding its breath. Forks stopped moving. Glasses stayed on tables. 300 guests were pretending not to watch while watching every single second. Clayton Prescott didn't notice. Or maybe he did and didn't care. Because the man was not finished. He turned back to Amara. His face was flushed. A vein pulsed on the side of his neck. The kind of anger that doesn't come from being wronged. The kind that comes from being challenged by someone you believe has no right to challenge you. "You're still standing here?" His voice carried across the nearest 10 tables. "I told you to leave. Security is standing right there. What part of get out don't you understand? Is it the English? Should I speak slower for you?" Amara stood perfectly still. Her dress was still damp with champagne. Her knee was still bleeding. But her back was straight, and her eyes never left his. "I'm not leaving. I was invited to this gala. My name is on the guest list." Clayton took another step forward. He was close now. Too close. The kind of close that's designed to make someone shrink. "Your name," he laughed through his nose. "Your name means nothing. You could tattoo your name on the front door of this hotel, and you'd still be nothing. You want to know why?" He leaned in. His champagne breath hit her face. "Because you are a cockroach, and cockroaches don't get to pretend they're people just because they crawled into a nice room." Lorraine appeared at his side like a shadow. She hadn't been idle. She'd been on her phone. And now she held it up like a weapon. "I called the general counsel's office," she announced, loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. "They're sending someone. This woman entered without authorization. That's criminal trespass." She looked at Amara the way someone looks at gum on the bottom of their shoe. "You know what's going to happen now, don't you? They're going to arrest you. They're going to put handcuffs on those skinny little wrists. And tomorrow morning, your mugshot is going to be all over the news." She smiled. Another black face in a police lineup. How original. A woman at a nearby table put her hand over her mouth. An older man shook his head but said absolutely nothing. Amara's hands were shaking now, not from fear, from rage she was forcing down with every muscle in her body. "You don't know anything about me," Amara said quietly. Lorraine tilted her head. "Oh, I know everything about you. I knew everything the second you walked in. The cheap fabric, the drugstore makeup, that nappy little—" "Lorraine," Clayton held up his hand, not to stop her, to take over. He wanted the stage back. He turned to Amara one more time. "Let me tell you something, and I want you to remember it for the rest of your miserable life. People like you, and I mean exactly what you think I mean, you don't get to stand in rooms like this. You don't get to eat this food. You don't get to breathe this air. This world was not built for you. It was built for us. And no matter how many doors you sneak through, that will never change." He straightened his tuxedo, adjusted his cufflinks, like he'd just finished taking out the trash. "Now get on your knees and clean up that champagne you spilled on my floor." The room was frozen. 300 people, not one voice, not one hand raised, just the soft hum of the ventilation system and the distant clink of ice in a water pitcher. Amara stood there. Her chest rose and fell. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with something harder, something sharper. She blinked once, swallowed once, and then she locked her jaw. She wasn't going to cry. Not here, not in front of him. "I said," Clayton started again. "I heard what you said." Her voice cut the air like a blade. Low, steady, controlled in a way that made Clayton's confidence flicker for just half a second. "Every word, and so did every person in this room." Clayton recovered fast. He always did. Men like him had a lifetime of practice, turning cruelty into confidence. "Good," he said. "Then they all know what happens when vermin wanders into the wrong room." But here's the thing Clayton didn't see. While he was busy performing his little show of power, things were happening behind him that were about to change everything. First, the phones. At least a dozen guests had their phones out. Some were pretending to check messages. Some weren't pretending at all. One woman at table 9 had her phone propped against a centerpiece, recording the entire confrontation from a low angle. A man near the bar had been filming since the moment Amara hit the floor. Clayton didn't notice any of it. He was too busy looking down to see what was happening around him. Second, Elliot Graves. Elliot was sitting 3 tables away, gray suit, press badge tucked inside his jacket pocket. He was an investigative journalist for the National Chronicle, one of the most respected newsrooms in the country. He wasn't here for the champagne. He was working undercover, investigating corruption among elite political donors. Tonight was supposed to be about shady tax deductions and backroom deals. But what he just witnessed was something else entirely. He had his phone in his hand, camera rolling. He'd been recording since Clayton's first sentence, and he recognized Amara Donovan immediately. He'd profiled her 2 years ago for a feature on tech entrepreneurs reshaping global philanthropy. His jaw was tight. His eyes were sharp. He typed a text to his editor with one thumb while keeping the camera steady with the other hand. Forget the donor story. Clayton Prescott just assaulted and publicly humiliated Amara Donovan at the Heritage Gala. I have everything on video. All of it. His editor replied in 4 seconds. "Who is Amara Donovan?" Elliot almost laughed. He typed back, "The woman whose portrait is hanging in the lobby." He doesn't know. Third, and most important, Senator Diane Whitfield. Senator Whitfield had just arrived. She was late. Her car had been stuck in Beltway traffic for 40 minutes. She walked through the grand atrium lobby in a navy blue gown, her heels clicking on Italian marble. She passed the portrait of Amara Donovan. She smiled at it, the way you smile at a photo of an old friend. Then she walked into the ballroom. And the first thing she saw was Clayton Prescott standing over Amara like a man who thought he owned the world and everything in it. She saw the champagne stain on Amara's dress. She saw the blood on her knee. She saw the look on Clayton's face, that smug, self-satisfied expression of a man who believed he had just put someone in their place. Senator Whitfield had known Amara for 12 years. She'd watched her build Pinnacle Dynamics from nothing. She'd sat next to her at state dinners. She'd personally nominated her for the Changemaker Award. Her face hardened. Her stride changed. She was no longer a late guest arriving at a party. She was a storm walking across a marble floor. The tension in the room was at its absolute peak. Clayton was still talking, still puffing his chest, still treating Amara like something he'd scraped off his shoe. Lorraine was still sneering. The crowd was still silent. And then, from the back of the ballroom, a voice. Clear, commanding, the kind of voice that made senators sit up straight and lobbyists shut their mouths. "Clayton." He turned. Senator Diane Whitfield was walking straight toward him, and she was not smiling. Senator Diane Whitfield crossed that ballroom floor like a woman who had already decided exactly what was about to happen. Her heels hit the marble with purpose. Guests stepped aside without being asked. The string quartet had stopped playing. The only sound was her footsteps and the faint crackle of Terrence Cole's security earpiece. Clayton saw her coming and immediately shifted. His shoulders relaxed, his chin lifted. He straightened his cufflinks. Because this was someone who mattered. A United States senator, a woman of power, a woman of his world. He extended his hand. "Senator Whitfield, thank God you're here. You wouldn't believe the evening I've had. Security at this hotel is an absolute disgrace. This woman," he gestured at Amara like he was pointing at a stain on the carpet, "wandered in off the street. No invitation, no business being here. I've been trying to have her removed for the past 10 minutes, and nobody in this building seems capable of doing their job." He laughed. That confident, buddy-buddy laugh. The laugh of a man who assumed everyone in his tax bracket saw the world exactly the way he did. Senator Whitfield did not take his hand. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. She looked at his outstretched fingers like they were covered in something foul. Then she looked past him, at Amara, at the champagne-soaked dress, at the blood drying on her knee, at the quiet, unbroken stillness in her eyes. Senator Whitfield's voice was ice. "Clayton, do you have any idea who you just put your hands on?" The laugh died on his lips. "What?" "The woman you just shoved to the ground. The woman you called, what was it?" She looked around the room. "A cockroach? A rat? Vermin?" She paused, let every word land. "Do you know who she is?" Clayton blinked. She's nobody. She doesn't have an invitation. Her name is Amara Donovan." Silence. "She is the founder and CEO of Pinnacle Dynamics, a $4.2 billion company. She is worth more than twice what you are, Clayton. And she didn't inherit a single penny of it." Clayton's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Senator Whitfield wasn't finished. She is also the guest of honor tonight, the keynote speaker, the woman this entire gala was organized to celebrate. She tilted her head. You would have known that if you'd bothered to read your invitation instead of just writing the check. The color drained from Clayton Prescott's face like someone had pulled the plug. His lips moved, but no words came. His champagne glass trembled in his hand. Lorraine grabbed his arm, not to support him, but to steady herself. Her face had gone white. Senator Whitfield turned slowly. She raised one hand and pointed toward the open ballroom doors. Through them, the grand atrium lobby was clearly visible. The marble fireplace, the gold-leafed walls, and the portrait. 6 feet tall, oil on canvas. Amara Donovan's face rendered in rich, warm detail. Her eyes calm, her expression steady. The same expression she was wearing right now, standing in a champagne-soaked dress with a bleeding knee, 10 feet from the man who had tried to destroy her dignity. The gold plaque beneath it caught the chandelier light. Amara Donovan, changemaker of the decade, for transforming communities through innovation and compassion. Every head in the room turned. 300 guests looked at the portrait, then looked at Amara, then looked at Clayton. The silence was deafening. Clayton turned last. He stared at the portrait like he was seeing a ghost. His mouth hung open. His hand went limp. The champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor. Lorraine's phone dropped from her hand. It clattered against the stone. Terence Cole stood behind them both, arms folded, face unreadable. He said one sentence. "I tried to tell you, sir." The murmurs started, low at first, then louder. Every phone in the room was up now, not hidden, not pretending, pointed directly at Clayton Prescott's face, recording every blink, every twitch, every second of his unraveling. And then Amara spoke. She didn't shout. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Her voice came out low and clear and steady, the kind of steady that only comes from a lifetime of being underestimated. Mr. Prescott. He flinched, actually flinched, like his own name had slapped him. You looked at me tonight and you saw a cockroach, a rat, an animal. You saw my skin, and you made your decision before I ever opened my mouth. She took one step forward. He took one step back. I built my company from nothing. I grew up in a housing project 15 miles from where you're standing. I have sat across from presidents. I have created jobs and communities you wouldn't drive through with your windows up. Another step forward. Another step back. And tonight, I was knocked to the ground by a man who couldn't imagine that a black woman in a simple dress might be the most accomplished person in this room. She stopped, looked him up and down, the same way he had looked at her. That says nothing about me, Mr. Prescott. It says everything about you. One person clapped, then another, then the whole room. The applause hit like a wave, sudden, loud, and merciless. Clayton Prescott stood in the middle of it, alone. The applause hadn't even died down before Clayton started drowning. His mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled out of water. His hands trembled at his sides. Sweat was forming along his hairline. The tuxedo that had made him look like a king 5 minutes ago now looked like a costume on a man who'd been caught stealing. This was... Senator Whitfield, you have to understand. I don't have to understand anything, Clayton. It was a misunderstanding, a simple misunderstanding. I didn't know. How was I supposed to know? You weren't supposed to know. Senator Whitfield's voice could have cut glass. That's the point. You shouldn't need to know someone's net worth before you treat them like a human being. Clayton pivoted. He turned to Amara. His face twisted into something that was supposed to look like remorse, but landed somewhere between panic and nausea.
Ms. Donovan, Amara, I sincerely apologize. I am not the man you saw tonight. I have donated millions to diversity causes. I support the Black community. I have always— You called me a cockroach. Amara's voice was flat. You called me a rat. You told me to crawl back to the gutter. You shoved me to the ground. You told me to get on my knees. She paused. Let every word settle into the silence. In front of 300 people. Which part of that was the misunderstanding? Clayton had nothing. His mouth moved, but his brain had stopped sending words. He tried one more time, desperate now. I'll make a donation to your foundation, whatever amount, name it. We can put this behind us tonight. No one needs to—
You think you can buy your way out of this? Amara shook her head slowly. That's exactly the problem. You think money fixes everything. You think a check erases what you said, what you did. She stepped closer. Her voice dropped, quiet enough that only Clayton and the nearest guests could hear. You can't write a check big enough to buy back what you just lost. Lorraine grabbed his elbow. Her face was gray. Her diamonds caught the chandelier light, but her eyes were dead. We're leaving, Clayton, now. We are leaving right now. She pulled him toward the exit. He stumbled. The man who had walked into this room like he owned the building was now being dragged out of it by his wife.
But they didn't get far. The Sterling Heritage Hotel's general manager appeared at the ballroom entrance. A tall woman in a black suit, calm face, cold eyes. She had been briefed by Terrence Cole's team less than 2 minutes ago, and she had already made her decision. She stepped directly into Clayton's path. Mr. Prescott. Clayton tried to straighten up, tried to find the old voice. I'm leaving. You don't need to— Mr. Prescott, I'm informing you that your membership to the Sterling Heritage Club has been permanently revoked, effective immediately. You are no longer welcome at this hotel or any of its affiliated properties. Clayton's jaw dropped. You can't. Do you know how much money I've spent in this? I'm aware of exactly how much you've spent, sir, and I'm aware of exactly what you've done tonight. Our legal team will be in contact regarding the incident. For now, you need to leave. She stepped aside. Terrence Cole stepped forward. Terrence didn't say a word. He didn't need to. He simply extended one arm toward the lobby exit and looked at Clayton with the kind of patience that felt more terrifying than anger. Clayton and Lorraine walked through the ballroom doors into the grand atrium lobby, past the marble fireplace, past the gold-leafed walls, and past the portrait. Amara Donovan's face, 6 feet tall, painted in rich oils, stared down at them as they walked underneath it. The gold plaque glowed under the chandelier light. Clayton kept his eyes on the floor. Lorraine's heels caught on the marble, and she stumbled. Neither of them looked up. Terrence Cole walked 3 steps behind them, all the way to the front door. He held it open. He watched them climb into the Bentley. He watched the taillights disappear into the D.C. night. Then he went back inside and did his job. The videos hit the internet before the Bentley reached the first traffic light. 3 angles, 4 angles, 5. One from table 9, the woman with her phone propped against the centerpiece. One from the bar. One from a guest who had been standing 6 feet away and captured Clayton's face in perfect clarity as he called Amara a worthless animal. The hashtag started within minutes. Hashtag Prescott Gala. By midnight, it was trending in every major U.S. city.
By morning, it had 12 million views across platforms, 16 million by noon. Elliot Graves published his report on the National Chronicle's website within the hour. The headline read, "Billionaire mogul humiliates black CEO at charity gala. Didn't know her portrait was hanging behind him." Prescott Capital Holdings Board of Directors released a statement before sunrise. 3 sentences, carefully worded, distancing themselves from Clayton like he was radioactive. 2 major investors announced they were reviewing their positions. Clayton's PR team put out a statement calling the incident an unfortunate misunderstanding. The internet tore it apart in seconds. The videos were just the beginning. Within 48 hours, Amara Donovan retained one of the most respected civil rights law firms in Washington, D.C. She filed 2 actions. The first, a civil lawsuit against Clayton Prescott III for assault, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The second, a formal criminal complaint with the D.C. District Attorney's Office. The DA didn't hesitate. 5 separate video recordings, over 30 eyewitnesses, a United States senator willing to testify. The criminal assault charges were filed before the end of the week. But here's where it got worse for Clayton. Much worse. The discovery phase cracked his world wide open. Amara's legal team subpoenaed internal communications from Prescott Capital Holdings. What came back was a goldmine of filth. Emails, dozens of them, from Clayton to his property managers across 6 states. The language was specific, deliberate, unmistakable. One email to a manager in Atlanta read, "Keep a certain demographic out of the premium units. I don't care how you do it. Raise the deposit. Lose the application. Use your imagination." Another to his Miami office. "If they can't pass the look test, they don't get the tour. You know exactly what I mean." Text messages between Clayton and Lorraine surfaced next. One from the night before the gala. "Another diversity gala tomorrow. 3 hours of pretending I care about these people. At least the wine is good." Lorraine had replied, "Just smile and write the check, darling. Tax season is coming." Then the witnesses started coming forward. A former vice president at Prescott Capital Holdings, a man named Bradley Owens, who had worked there for 9 years, went public with a sworn affidavit. He testified that Clayton routinely used racial slurs in private meetings, that he referred to black tenants as liabilities, that he had personally blocked 3 partnership deals with minority-owned firms because, in Clayton's words, "I don't do business with people who can't keep their own neighborhoods clean." Bradley Owens said he had stayed silent for years out of fear. The gala video gave him the courage to speak. He wasn't the last. 4 more former employees came forward within a month. Same stories, same language, same pattern. The Department of Justice opened a preliminary inquiry into potential Fair Housing Act violations across Prescott Capital Holdings' entire portfolio. 12 states, over 40,000 rental units. A decade of records to comb through. Clayton Prescott wasn't just facing a bad news cycle anymore. He was facing the full weight of the American legal system. The trial began 11 weeks later. Judge Carolyn Stanton presiding. The courtroom was packed. Every major news network had a camera in the room. The gallery was standing room only. Outside, a crowd gathered on the courthouse steps, signs, chanting, live streaming. The story had become bigger than one man and one woman at a gala. It had become a symbol. The prosecution opened with the video. All 5 angles, played in sequence, every word amplified through the courtroom speakers. Clayton's voice,
sharp, venomous, unmistakable, filled the room. "What's a filthy cockroach like you doing at a gala full of real people? You're a rat in a cheap dress. Crawl back to the gutter, you worthless animal. Get on your knees and clean up that champagne you spilled on my floor."
The jury watched in silence. 12 faces, 12 sets of eyes locked on the screen. A woman in the front row pressed her hand against her chest. A man in the back row shook his head slowly. Then they played the footage of the shove, slowed down, frame by frame. Clayton's hand on Amara's shoulder, the force of the push, her body hitting the marble, the blood on her knee. The prosecution rested the video evidence and moved to character witnesses. A former Secretary of Education took the stand. She described Amara as the most quietly powerful person I've ever met. The CEO of a Fortune 500 company that partnered with Pinnacle Dynamics testified that Amara had personally created over 11,000 jobs in underserved communities. 3 recipients of her foundation scholarships, now a doctor, an engineer, and a public school principal, sat in the witness box and described how Amara Donovan had changed the trajectory of their lives. The courtroom was silent through every word. Then Clayton took the stand. His lawyers had coached him. Stay calm, show remorse, use the word regret as many times as possible. It lasted about 4 minutes. Under cross-examination, the prosecutor asked a simple question. "Mr. Prescott, when you looked at Ms. Donovan that evening, what did you see?" Clayton shifted in his seat. I saw a woman I didn't recognize." "You didn't recognize her, so you called her a cockroach?" I was upset. It was a heated moment. A heated moment. The prosecutor picked up a printed email. "Is it also a heated moment when you instruct your property managers to keep, and I'm quoting your words, a certain demographic out of premium housing units?" Clayton's lawyer objected. Overruled. The prosecutor held up another document. "And is it also a heated moment when you text your wife that attending a diversity gala means, and again, your words, 3 hours of pretending I care about these people?" Clayton's face went red. That was a private conversation. A private conversation that reflects a pattern, Mr. Prescott, a pattern of contempt, a pattern of discrimination, a pattern that didn't start at that gala and wouldn't have stopped if 5 cameras hadn't been rolling. She turned to the jury. "Mr. Prescott has stated that he supports diversity, that he's donated millions to minority causes." She paused, let the silence build. "Donating money to communities while privately calling their members cockroaches, rats, and animals, while systematically excluding them from your properties. That is not support. That is camouflage." Clayton had no answer. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. His lawyer stared at the table. The jury deliberated for 3 hours and 42 minutes. Guilty. On all counts. Criminal assault conviction. 18 months of supervised probation. 300 hours of community service, specifically with civil rights organizations. Mandatory completion of a racial bias education program. A restraining order prohibiting any contact with Amara Donovan. The civil judgment hit even harder. The jury awarded Amara $5.8 million in compensatory and punitive damages. Amara stood at the courthouse steps that afternoon and announced that every cent would be donated to her foundation's education fund. The federal investigation delivered the final blow. The DOJ concluded that Prescott Capital Holdings had engaged in systematic housing discrimination across 12 states for over a decade. The consent decree required a complete overhaul of the company's housing practices, independent monitoring for 5 years, and $22 million in fines and restitution to affected tenants. The board of Prescott Capital Holdings voted unanimously to remove Clayton Prescott III as chairman. The vote took less time than the jury deliberation. Clayton Prescott walked out of that courthouse with nothing. No company, no title, no reputation, no power. Just a name that now meant exactly one thing. The story didn't end in that courtroom. Stories like this never do. The verdict was a door, and what came after it mattered more than any sentence a judge could hand down. Amara Donovan went back to work, not with a press tour, not with a book deal, not with a victory lap on cable news. She walked into Pinnacle Dynamics headquarters on a Monday morning, sat down at her desk, and opened her laptop. Same coffee, same routine, same woman. But she did one thing differently. She took the $5.8 million from the civil judgment, every cent, and used it to launch the Donovan Justice Fellowship, a legal aid program, free representation for people who experience racial discrimination but don't have the money to fight back. The people who get called cockroaches in rooms with no cameras. The people who get shoved and nobody records it. The people who get told they don't belong and have no senator walking in to save them. Within its first year, the fellowship took on 43 cases across 12 states. A black family in Alabama denied a home loan despite perfect credit. A Latino teenager in Texas suspended from school for wearing his hair in braids. A black nurse in Ohio fired after reporting a supervisor's racial slurs. 43 cases. 43 people who had been told, in one way or another, to crawl back to the gutter. 43 people who now had someone standing beside them. Amara gave one television interview after the verdict. Just one. The anchor asked her what she wanted people to take away from everything that happened. She said, "This was never about me. I had the resources to fight. I had the platform. I had a senator who walked into the room at the right moment. What about the people who don't? What about the woman at the gala who has no portrait on the wall? That's who this verdict is for." The anchor paused, then asked, "Do you forgive him?" Amara looked straight into the camera. "Forgiveness is a gift, and I don't give gifts to people who never learned how to say sorry." Clayton Prescott III lost everything. Not slowly, not gracefully. Like a building being demolished floor by floor while the whole world watched. His company? Gone. The board's unanimous vote removed him as chairman and erased his name from the letterhead within 30 days. Prescott Capital Holdings became Meridian Property Group. They didn't even keep the P. His money? Gutted. He was forced to sell 2 properties to cover legal fees, the civil judgment, and his portion of the federal fines. The waterfront penthouse in Miami went first. The vineyard estate in Napa went second. Both sold below market value because nobody wanted their name associated with his. His reputation? Destroyed. Every club membership, every board seat, every invitation list. Deleted. The man who used to walk into rooms like he owned them now couldn't get a table at a restaurant without someone recognizing his face from the video. His wife? Gone. Lorraine filed for divorce 3 months after the verdict. She cited irreconcilable differences. The real reason was simpler. She wanted distance from the fallout. The prenuptial agreement was brutal. She walked away with less than she expected and more public shame than she could handle. 6 months after the verdict, a photographer spotted Clayton at his court-mandated community service. He was at a civil rights museum in Virginia, picking up trash in the parking lot, wearing an orange vest. A school bus full of fourth graders pulled into the lot while he was emptying a garbage can. One of the kids pointed at him and asked the teacher who that man was. The teacher didn't answer. Elliot Graves won a National Press Award for his coverage of the incident and the investigation into Prescott Capital Holdings. His article, the one he filed from the ballroom floor that night, was cited in the DOJ's formal complaint. The Sterling Heritage Hotel permanently renamed the Grand Atrium lobby. It is now called the Donovan Atrium. The portrait still hangs above the fireplace. The plaque was updated. It now includes one additional line. She stood when the world told her to kneel. The portrait was always on that wall. Clayton Prescott just never bothered to look.